So I'm going to be talking to you a bit today about redesigning education for uncertain futures, based, as Jack said, on some of the research and findings from my PhD. So to start with, I did want to sort of acknowledge, just begin and add my acknowledgement that I'm joining you today from the Gadigal lands of the Eora people. I'm in at UTS. And I wanted to, I guess, just share with you this project that I came across a few years ago when I was in Central Australia, which is called Uti Kulanjaku. So this was a project that was developed by the NPY Women's Council. So they, the Nungu women went and spent time with young people, with community and with health services.
She accessed the communication pathway and so he doesn't need to have all that.
Sorry, Ali, are you?
I'm just trying to mute, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it was a great sort of cross-cultural project, and what they were looking to do was to find the right words in language to describe young people's mental health experiences or just general sort of mental and emotional experiences. And it's available as a set of cards and also as a set of fridge magnets. So I just wanted to share that project with you. So today I'm going to start by giving you a bit of context of my research and a bit of an overview. I'll then go into telling you a bit about some of the design methodologies I used, including co-design and participatory design. I'll share some of my key findings and some of the questions, and then we'll have time for questions and discussion at the end. I do also have a little interactive piece that I'd love you to join me with, I guess in my sort of ongoing co-inquiry around this subject, which is on Miro. So when we get to that point, Jax will share the link in the chat, and be great to get your sort of thoughts and insights as well. So just to start with, my primary research focus was on looking at, this is my research topic, was towards an understanding of resilience and experiential learning for young people in the context of uncertain futures and climate disruption. And then I had three sort of key sub-questions that I was exploring in my research as well. So what are the key issues impacting the wellbeing and resilience of young people in Australia in the early 2020s? What meta-competencies might support young people to develop greater resilience in this context? And what can we learn from other worldviews in exploring these? And lastly, what learning environments and experiences in secondary school can support young people to develop these meta-competencies? So these stats are from a report done last year by the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the National Study of Mental Health and Wellbeing. So just to sort of set the context a little bit, what they found was that 38.8% of young people aged 16 to 24 have experienced mental illness in the last 12 months, including half of young women and a third of young men. Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander young people and LGBTQI plus young people are disproportionately represented in those figures as well. So some of the most common mental illnesses and challenges affecting young people include anxiety, affective illness such as depression and substance abuse. And I guess for me, as someone who suffered from mental illness myself as a teenager and over the last sort of 5 years have had the experience of trying to support my teenagers in sort of navigating some of these challenges through high school and the health system. To me, these statistics are very shocking because it makes me think that, you know, the experiences that we've been going through are shared by tens of thousands, if not millions of families and young people across Australia. So just to, I guess, sort of build on that context, so the young people have been described as the canaries in the coal mine of society as they struggle to adjust to the rapid social, economic, cultural and technological changes. And as Helen Christensen from Black Dog so aptly put, with more than 75% of mental issues developing before the age of 25, we have a critical window here to intervene before mental illness takes hold with lifelong consequences. We have the power to alter the trajectory of these statistics. Prevention is always better than cure, and the time to act is now. By the way, that young woman in the photo is one of my daughters. So one of the issues increasingly affecting young people's mental health as well is around the environment and climate change. So some research was done after the Black Summer bushfires. And what one study found in 2020 was that increasingly climate anxiety is affecting young people's mental health. So 78% of young people were concerned or extremely concerned about climate change. And the studies show that young people are becoming increasingly frustrated and challenged by the fact that they feel that their views aren't being heard. So in this study, only 13% felt their views were being listened to by leaders in the government. So as part of my exploratory research, I spoke to 20 educators and youth workers, I guess to try and get a bit of a sense for people who are working with young people day to day, what they thought were some of the key issues impacting wellbeing and resilience for young people. And these are some of the key themes that came out of those interviews. So they said that some of the things that they noticed were that young people were needing freedom but lacking boundaries. And there was a particular element in there around technology and social media. There was a loss of sense of connection and belonging, particularly with sort of families and communities. There was confusion and pressure around identity, again, impacted by social media. There was a sense that from young people that there are changing institutions and pathways, and that things are not perhaps as clear as they were for previous generations. So I guess around big sort of institutions like religion, the economy and the future of work, for example. There were obviously many challenges around mental health that teachers and youth workers were noticing, and overall a general sort of high level of uncertainty that young people were experiencing. So one of the questions, I guess, that led me to was, does this then change the role of learning and education in our society? So given only a small percentage of young people do access help with their mental health challenges, schools have become, I think, increasingly a site where there's potential to influence change for early intervention in these challenges. I had some conversations with the Department of Education before I started the pilot program, and one of the things that they said that was most important and challenging for them was around encouraging help-seeking behaviour, as many young people don't seek help for various reasons. So that may be due to stigma or culture, or a feeling that they can sort of get through it on their own. And often young people will tell their friends, but nobody else if they're struggling. So we really need new and novel approaches to support young people with their mental health. And as Allhouse suggests here, we need to redesign the current service systems to enable early intervention and address the specific needs of young people and families. So one of the sort of, I guess, systemic challenges that I found was that because youth mental health sits very much between education and the health systems, they're not always speaking to each other in the same languages. And this is the area that I'm really interested to work in, to see where the potential for collaboration and change might be, I guess, led by families and young people. So before we go any further, I just wanted to invite you to add some of your ideas and perspectives to the Miro board. So Jax will put a link in the chat for you. And yeah, if you want to just jump in and have a look. So in the left-hand side, I've got a box, a frame to represent the current education system. So if you had any thoughts around sort of values, priorities and outcomes in the current education system, that would be great. My research is primarily around high schools, but you may also have, sort of observations and thoughts about primary school or higher education and university. So it'd be great if you could just jump in there now. We'll have a few minutes to see what comes up with that. I'm just going to. Are people able to access that okay? Okay, so I can see someone's put teacher equals expert. Numbers and measurable outcomes only. Respect. First century skills. Great, okay. So feel free to keep sort of adding things there, and we'll come back to this as well a little bit later on. So I'm just going to So one of the things that I was really curious about was what does learning for uncertainty look like? So I looked at a range of different pedagogies, including sort of those with more relational knowledge systems, to try and understand what it might look like. And some of the key themes in common that I found across these models was that learning for uncertainty needs to be learner or student-led. It needs to be embodied. So including not only cognitive, but also physical and emotional aspects of learning. Interconnected in that it's recognising and foregrounding the importance of connection of learning in terms of people, place, communities, and the more than human world. And that it's experiential, so it's learning by doing through hands-on experience and reflection. And lastly, and one which I think is perhaps challenging in many education environments, is that it involves an exposure to novel situations, paradox, or dilemmas. So learners are immersed in environments that give challenges, where given challenges where there's no clear answers or outcomes and must collectively navigate the unknown. So this quote is from Barnett, I think, to me, reflects where we can be going with education, given the context that young people are experiencing. So amid super complexity, the educational task is primarily an ontological task, says Barnett, ontological in being as well as knowing. So it's the task of enabling individuals to prosper amid super complexity, amid a situation where there are no stable descriptions of the world. So in terms of looking at how can young people, I think I might just need to close that. So how can learning help young people develop resilience? The definition of resilience that I mainly used in my research was one from Ungar, who defines resilience as the outcome from negotiations between individuals and their environment for the resources to define themselves as healthy amidst conditions collectively viewed as adverse. And from this, I was really interested, as I mentioned, in, I guess, other relational worldviews and how they look at resilience and learning. So I looked at Buddhist philosophy and psychology, which I've been studying myself since my mid-20s, as well as looking at some of the work of Aboriginal scholars and elders. So one example is the 8 Ways of Aboriginal Learning. And through bringing in these different relational contexts of learning, so you can see in the blue map there, I've got different sort of levels of, I guess, potential intervention or influence that can influence wellbeing and resilience for young people. And from that, I came up with this concept of transilience or transformative resilience. So transilience I've defined as a conscious, active, dynamic process of adaptation between a person and their environment that enables transformation in response to adverse experiences or circumstances by strengthening a relationship to self, community, and nature. So if you think about resilience as a dynamic interaction between a young person and their environment, what I'm really interested in is what are the meta-competencies that can support young people if the environment becomes increasingly challenging and adverse, which seems to be contributing to the growing level of mental health and anxiety of young people. What sort of meta-competencies might support young people in this context? So a meta-competency is an overarching competence relevant to a wide range of settings that relate to learning, adapting, and creating change. So these are the 6 meta-competencies that I identified in my research. So agency, adaptability, creativity, compassion, self-awareness, and interbeing. So I'll just let you have a bit of a look at them. I guess the one that's least well known is probably interbeing, which is really about interdependence and interconnectedness of all life. So experiencing a connection with inner self, other, and the natural world. And the way I came up with these meta-competencies was based on, I guess, a combination of my initial literature review, my interviews with educators and youth workers, as well as the co-design workshops with young people and students and teachers. So one of the design methodologies I wanted to mention, which I used in my study, was Theory U, which some of you might be familiar with. So I use this as a bit of a model for my own, I guess, designing my own research process. And it also then sort of led into the process that we used with the students, with them designing their own projects. So this process starts with co-initiating, and in this part of the process, you want to try and build a common intent, shared values. And I did this by my sort of engagement with the school over about sort of 3 to 6 months in meeting with some of the teachers and I guess establishing where the common value might be. So the school I worked with was experiencing significant challenges in terms of student mental health, and they had identified resilience as one of their main priorities for their sort of future strategy, and that had been very much endorsed by parents at the school as well. The next step is co-sensing. So this is where you're sort of immersing yourself in the environment and wanting to really understand what's going on through engaging with people and trying to understand what their perspective and needs are. So for this, I did a series of co-design workshops with teachers and students, and that then fed into the design of the pilot program. At the bottom of the U is a space called presencing. So this is where you sort of connect to the source of inspiration, and this is sort of where the open well comes in. So you're really trying to sense into what is the highest possible good of this system. And by coincidence, this happened during the height of lockdowns during COVID. So I was up in my little attic room, converted attic room, which had been converted to an office, and had quite a lot of time to really reflect and think about what might be the highest good for the education system and how might we go about trying to sort of understand that. So we designed and started running the pilot program, I guess, during that phase. In terms of the next stage, which is co-creating, this is where you're sort of prototyping the new with living examples that can sort of explore what the future might look like. So for me, this part of the process was really demonstrated in the student-led projects. So I'll go into that in a bit more detail in a minute, but this is where students designed learning experiences for students 2 years younger than them to support their mental health and resilience. And from that, the last stage is co-evolving. So this is where you're sort of, I guess, starting to, and I guess part of what I'm doing now is this co-evolving where you're starting to share what you've learned. And the students were invited to present their projects to the school wellbeing committee, which was really quite effective in terms of, I guess, sort of communicating what some of their findings were with their research. So related to Theory U, which I should say is also, this awareness-based systems change is also developed by the Presencing Institute. So the Presencing Institute are based at in the Sloan School of Management at MIT, and Otto Sharma is one of the people that's been leading that team. So awareness-based systems change is based on the premise that you can't understand a system unless you can change it, which comes from Kurt Lewin's field theory. And to that, Otto Scharmer added that you can't change a system unless you transform consciousness. And you can't transform consciousness unless you can make a system sense and see itself. So part of what we were doing in the pilot program in working with the teachers and the students and the school leadership and the Wellbeing Committee was to try to help the system sense and see itself. So in the co-design workshops with teachers, I used some systems thinking tools. So this is one that we use quite a lot, which is called Rich Pictures. And I asked the teachers to map what they thought, collectively map what they thought were the most important issues impacting the wellbeing and resilience of students at that time. We also had, as I mentioned, a sort of a longer sort of dialogue process as well in looking to sort of find mutual interest and value in working together on the research. With working with the students for the co-design workshops, again, we used a range of sort of systems thinking methods, so including rich pictures. The students did empathy interviews where they went out and interviewed their peers and then came back and mapped their findings, which you can see on the right-hand side is what the students are doing here. So we really wanted to try and engage the students as co-inquirers in this process. And we relied very much on the work of K.A. McKercher in both the design of the pilot. We also introduced these concepts to the students to use in the co-design of their own work. So K.A. talks about 4 principles of co-design, which is sharing power, prioritising relationships, using participatory means, and building capacity. And the 6 mindsets they talk about are elevating the user experience, curiosity, hospitality, being in the grey, learning through doing, and valuing many perspectives. And in retrospect, when I look back on the design and delivery of the pilot, these were really quite significant in the way that we sort of approached it. And I think the success of it in many ways. So this is an example of the rich pictures that the students did. So again, they responded to the same question that we had asked of the teachers, which is, what do you think are the most important things impacting the resilience and wellbeing of young people at the moment? So you can see some of the things there they identified were time pressure, the future, the HSC, COVID, money, school, tutoring. And in the middle there is an interesting one which says stigmas surrounding all of these. So our initial sort of thinking about the pilot program was that we might ask students to do a student-led project, which was based around climate change and sustainability. But after doing these workshops, we realised that it was actually going to be more relevant for us, for the students and for us in terms of understanding things like agency in particular, if we worked within the school system itself. And also we sort of felt that we didn't want to sort of put more pressure and more responsibility on these students who obviously already had a lot of pressure and anxiety around their current sort of school situation. So I should say that the school that we worked in was a single-sex selective high school. And again, like any school, you know, this is a unique environment. So the co-design process really helped us to try to understand what the needs and priorities were for the school. So the next sort of question was, how then can we build resilience through experiential learning? So we approached this by setting up a series of modules. So they were day-long learning modules that the students undertook over a 9-month period. And we also did a student-led or project-based learning activity that sort of ran over about 6 months of that 9-month period. So the modules that we ran were place-based learning, self-awareness and personal resilience, storytelling and perspective, systems thinking, and futures thinking. And as you can see, each of these had a number of those meta-competencies associated with them. So for example, the place-based learning module, which I'll talk a little bit more in detail now, was focused on interbeing and self-awareness. So the place-based learning, we took the students to a community-based centre, which was called the Coal Loader, and it's an old coal loading station that has been converted to a sustainability education centre. And we spent the day there and did a range of sort of immersive and experiential activities with the students. And one of the focuses we had for the day was on connecting with yourself, each other, and nature, as well as, I guess, connection and belonging, and what does belonging mean? So the meta-competencies, as I mentioned, were interbeing and self-awareness and reflexivity. So some of the activities we did included art and craft, nature walks, yoga. We explored Dadiri, or deep listening, AR tours of the site, journaling and storytelling, as well as, I guess, making it a fun and sort of engaging opportunity for the kids, for the young people to explore the environment themselves, as well as having food and music. So the types of data that we were collecting for our research included observations from myself and the other facilitators, feedback from students in the post-event surveys, dialogue and discussion during and after the activities, student journaling, and the artefacts that were created, such as the art and craft work, some of which you can see here. So I'll just give you a minute to have a look at this. This is some of the comments and feedback and reflections from the students after the day. I have to say I was quite blown away when I read these the first time. So I mean, I guess to me it showed that even in a very short amount of time, young people can have experiences that can change their sort of perspective around place and belonging. Whether these sort of continue longer term is another question, but certainly it did seem from the evidence that they were quite affected by the experience. So the other thing I just wanted to spend a bit of time and draw your attention to was the student-led projects. Because as I mentioned, in terms of developing individual and collective agency, I thought this was one of the most effective sort of parts of the pilot program. So the students worked in small groups and they came up with their own topics. So the provocation that we gave them was, if you knew now, so if you knew 2 years ago what you know now about wellbeing and resilience, how would you design a learning experience for Year 8 students? So one team decided to look at sleep culture in the school. So they felt that there was a bit of a toxic culture around sleep. So the less sleep you got, you sort of got a badge of honour if you got the least sleep. And they had sort of realised, I guess, over a couple of years that this was sort of impacting their mental health and wellbeing. So they experimented with a range of different learning approaches, and they came up with the idea of keeping sleep diaries and reflecting before they went to sleep and when they woke up each morning. And they then also prototyped that and tested it with the students in Year 8. As well as designing some interactive quizzes. And I guess one of the most effective things was, I guess, the students telling their own stories. And the teachers sort of acknowledged as well that, particularly with sleep, they'd had experts coming in, they'd had psychologists and teachers talk to the students about sleep, but the culture wasn't really shifting. But the Wellbeing Committee did say that they felt that this kind of approach of peer learning could potentially be more effective in influencing change. Another team looked at different learning styles. So they felt that when they were in Year 8, they would have benefited by understanding a bit more about what their learning styles were, and then that would have resulted in less stress for them in studying for exams and increased their self-confidence. And the last team, called Belonging, were interested in belonging and connection. So they were concerned that the Year 8 students who had started during COVID hadn't had a proper chance to be welcomed into the school, and they wanted to design an experience that might help to welcome and mentor them. So they designed a Minecraft game, which was designed as a choose your own adventure, which was based on their own stories and experiences around belonging and connection. So this game was to be played by students in Year 8 in small groups. So they'd play part of the game and then have a discussion, which again was prototyped with the younger students. So some of the methodologies that the students used were based on what were introduced to them in the workshops. So we did in the storytelling workshop, they looked at things like the hero's journey, constellations and triads. In the systems thinking workshop, they looked at rich pictures, root cause analysis, and different ways of sort of analysing and understanding a system. In the futures thinking workshop, they did horizon scanning, backcasting, and speculative scenarios. We used the 5 E's of experiential design, and also a focus on prototyping and experimentation. So they learnt about how to design safe to fail experiments and how to prototype and iterate. So you can see here is some of the work that the team Snooze did around sleep. Our last 2 workshops we had to hold online because it was during the COVID lockdowns. So the systems thinking and futures thinking, this is some of their work from that workshop. So coming back to our, I guess, sort of co-inquiry, I'm really curious to know from you, what do you think the sort of highest potential might be for education systems? And also, are there any sort of strategies or ideas or contributions that you think could be made to, I guess, sort of shift from the current system to the highest potential of the system? So Jack's, I might just...
Would you like me to do the screen share of the
Yeah,
mirror?
please, that'd be great. Thank you.
Awesome. No problem. Give me a moment and I'll get that thing.
I'll just stop sharing.
So this is the one on the right. Is that what you would like, Monique, or both?
Yeah, so the one on the right, the box on the right, which says the highest potential of the education system. Oh, great. I can see you've already been in there populating it. Fantastic. So agents of change, climate futures, future focused, less waste. And if you have any strategies or ideas, you can put in the big arrow there, will be great. Student-centred design, trauma-informed approaches, social ecological approaches, social determinants of health, yes, amazing. Students set their own goals for assessment. Oh, thank you for that. That's going to be really interesting for me to go back and have a look at afterwards. So I was just going to wrap up with a couple of the, I guess, findings of my research, and I want to make sure we have a bit of time for Q&A as well. I'll just share my screen again. Can you see that okay? Can you see my slides okay, Jax?
Yes, all good.
So coming back to this model of awareness-based systems change. So what I was doing, I guess, with bringing in these relational meta-competencies was looking to change the source conditions within the school culture or environment. So through developing these meta-competencies, There were certainly some shifts in terms of, I guess, the relational dynamics and the quality of relating that came out of that, both between the teachers, both between the students as well as between the students and the teachers, and also with their families, I would say, given that we went through the COVID lockdowns during this process, and I was sort of having ongoing conversations with the students. It was clear to me that some of the areas that we've worked on, particularly I think adaptability and self-awareness, were particularly valuable to them during the COVID lockdowns, and some of the reflections that they made afterwards sort of indicated that. And ideally, with being able to work with schools in this way, I'd love to also work with sort of teachers and community as part of the broader school community in this way. And ideally, we could help to have more diverse and resilient learning ecosystems, develop personal and collective agency for both teachers and staff, and have greater systems of compassion and care within the school environment. So I won't go into this in too much detail, but I did, as part of my research findings, map different pedagogies and learning approaches that might be, that I found to be effective for developing these meta-competencies, as well as sort of findings from the research in terms of the students' experience in engaging with these. I also looked at, for each of the meta-competencies, a series of enabling themes that can support experiential learning with regards to these. So, for example, with agency, some of the enabling factors I found were experiences of autonomy and self-efficacy, seeing the value of lived experience. So, for example, when I mentioned the team snooze and the belonging team relying on their own lived experiences to help design an experience for younger students. And lastly, creating change within complex systems. Some of the conditions that I identified as being important within schools to be able to do this sort of experiential and co-design work were engagement and commitment from the school leadership and teachers, a shared understanding of a challenge, willingness to explore and experiment to improve the situation, a conducive physical and psychological learning environment, which includes psychological safety, and a preparedness to give students agency in their learning process. So to finish off, I just had a short video. Actually, I just have to turn on the sound. Oh, I am sharing sound. Let's just see if this works. So this is just some reflections from the students. It's about 1.5 minutes, and we'll see how I go. Jax, if you can give me a thumbs up if you can hear it okay.
I think mainly the whole program was about resilience and how we can use those around us and support and everything we have, all our resources, to become more resilient, to become more aware of what's around us, and be more empathetic towards each other, and also learn as part of every process, every day.
I feel like before doing this program, I felt like you had to go through something to like become resilient from it. But doing this program, I can see that you can cultivate resilience in people, especially younger years, without having them go through an experience that's like changed them. Like you can kind of do like this preventative sort of thing that makes them resilient so that they don't have to, you know, fall in a hole. They can walk over it or see it coming.
I have not only become more resilient, but I've become more aware of other people's struggles and how other people might be feeling through the resilience program. Because one of the main things we looked at was the causes of stress. I know a few that were touched on were sleep and not belonging. And I've just become more aware of how my friends and peers and people in my cohort are feeling and how I might be able to alleviate some of their stress and maybe help them become more resilient.
So yeah, I'll give the students the last word on that, but they were amazing young women, and they've now actually finished their HSC. So that's how long it takes to get your PhD research finished. So thank you for your time, and be great to have a bit of a discussion and Q&A in the time that we have left. And if anyone's interested in, I guess, being involved with this area of research, what I'd love to do next is to work with a cluster or a group of schools and a local area health service to sort of see how this might be translated into a broader sort of system, and look at collecting some more sort of quantitative as well as qualitative research, because as I've discovered, the department and schools like quantitative research. So yeah, I'll stop sharing now, but it'd be great to have any questions or some discussion. Come on, give me a question.
I'll ask one. What barriers were there in doing this in the relationships with education system?
Well, I think some of the biggest barriers, particularly in high school, is the fact that every minute of time is very much scheduled, and it's very much scheduled for specific disciplines or subjects. So trying to sort of carve out the time to do the one-day workshops was, I think, quite challenging, although the school were incredibly supportive in sort of making it all happen. I think also in terms of doing co-design in a school, there are sort of limits to what, I guess, to what extent you can sort of do that co-design, because obviously there are a lot of constraints in working within the existing system and making sure that it's going to work for the teachers and the students and the school leadership. So I think that they'd be some of the main constraints. And I guess also just the recognition that wellbeing and resilience needs to be an integral part of the learning journey, and that it's equally important to, you know, any of the other subjects that students are studying, and in fact possibly more important, because a lot of young people's learning is impacted by their mental health, so their ability to learn is quite impacted. So
getting something like this adopted would have such huge potential. We've got a question here. What research translation tools will be developed to share your research findings, especially lived experience of young people with a wider audience?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Sienna. Well, I guess at the moment, I've been pretty focused on sort of just getting the thesis written. And I have published a couple of journal articles. In terms of the lived experience of young people, I've sort of been looking around, and also the experience of teachers. I've been looking around for good sort of education conferences to share this at, and I have presented at a few conferences around transformative learning, but there are not really a lot of good conferences in Australia that are looking at this sort of thing. A lot of the education conferences seem to be quite focused on technology at the moment. So yeah, I guess now that I've actually finished my research, I will be sort of looking at more opportunities to sort of share this and to involve teachers and young people in that. I'm doing a session tomorrow here at the TD school, and unfortunately the key liaison teacher that I worked with at the school is going to be coming along too, but I'd love to sort of involve some of the young people as well, depending on, you know, whether they're available. But if you have any thoughts, Sienna, I'd be really interested. Shanna, sorry.
Hi, Monique. I'll jump in with a question, but thanks so much for sharing your work. That was amazing. I've got so many questions because I work for the Smith family, and we're doing a large design research project at the moment where we're working quite deeply in Cairns and Ipswich, and we're trying to understand how we might be able to improve education experiences for First Nations students and families. And we're doing that with a very similar approach to what you just explained. And I just thought it would be great to kind of, just dive a bit deeper with you, sort of understand a bit more of the detail around it, because we've just started the work. We're running student engagements. We really want it to be led by the community. So we're just sort of, learning how to do that and everything. But we're very much in that sort of understand phase of, understanding the context of the community at the moment. But we do want to get to a point where we do have that student-led sort of design process later on. But yes, I think I will be in touch to, sort of hopefully collaborate with you.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to talk to you, Prue, and share anything that might be useful and hear a bit more about what you're doing.
Awesome, thank you.
So my email, Jax has my email, or also you could reach out on LinkedIn if that's easier.
Yep.
I'm
No
happy
worries.
to connect you two on email after this.
Perfect.
So, any other questions? No.
Thanks for coming along and sharing your lunchtime.
Yeah, thank you
Really
again,
appreciate it.
Monique. And just if anyone's interested to come and talk about design or come along to some trauma-informed design research, come along, and I'd love you to help get the word out. We could do with a few more signups for the designers listening circle. And we do have a few, but I think the more I think it's a really important conversation at the moment. Design is a bit of going through a bit of a funny place.